Somewhere in your kitchen, or in the kitchen of someone you love, there is probably a jar. A simple glass jar, perhaps sitting quietly on a shelf or tucked inside the refrigerator. Inside it, something is alive. Not alive in a dramatic sense. Alive in the oldest, most patient sense. A culture of wild yeast and bacteria, fermenting slowly, transforming flour and water into something with a flavor that no commercial product has ever been able to fully replicate. Sourdough starter. One of the oldest living things in the human kitchen. And the story of how it got there begins 5,000 years ago. The ancient Egyptians are generally credited with discovering leavened bread, though discovering is perhaps the wrong word. More accurately, they stumbled into it. A mixture of grain and water, left too long in the warm Egyptian air, began to ferment. Wild yeast from the environment colonized the mixture. Carbon dioxide bubbles formed. The dough rose. When it was baked, something remarkable happened. The bread was lighter, softer, more flavorful than anything that had come before it. And it lasted longer without spoiling. Word spread. As it always does, with something this good. By the time of the New Kingdom of ancient Egypt, professional bakers were maintaining living fermentation cultures, feeding them daily, and passing them from generation to generation like family heirlooms. Some of these cultures, in the continuous, unbroken chain of microbial life, are, in a technical sense, thousands of years old. There are bakeries in San Francisco today maintaining starters they claim date back to the gold rush of the 1840s. There is a family bakery in Bordeaux, France, that claims an unbroken starter lineage of over 150 years. Every loaf they bake carries, in some small biological sense, the memory of every loaf that came before it. What exactly is happening inside that jar? Wild yeast, Saccharomyces cerevisiae and its many relatives, consumes the simple sugars in flour and produces carbon dioxide and alcohol. This is what makes the bread rise. Simultaneously, lactic acid bacteria consume the same sugars and produce lactic and acetic acids. These are what give sourdough its characteristic tang, a flavor profile that varies depending on the local microbial population, the temperature, the humidity, and the particular flour used. This is why a San Francisco sourdough does not taste like one made in Paris, even from the same recipe. The wild yeasts are local. They carry the flavor of the place. Every loaf of sourdough is, in some small sense, a portrait of where it was made. The Romans carried sourdough culture across their expanding empire. Medieval monasteries in Europe maintained bread cultures as carefully as they maintained their libraries. During the Klondike Gold Rush, prospectors in the Yukon and Alaska carried sourdough starters strapped to their bodies, using body heat to keep the cultures alive through Arctic winters. These men became known simply as sourdoughs. The bread was so central to their survival that it became their identity. And then, in the 20th century, something happened. Industrial yeast, quick, standardized, reliable, was packaged and sold on a mass scale. Within a generation, the sourdough culture that had fed human civilization for 5,000 years was nearly forgotten, replaced by something faster, more convenient, more profitable. But it survived. In farmhouse kitchens, in eccentric bakeries, in the hands of bakers who could not explain exactly why they refused to give it up, except that the bread was simply better. In the early 2020s, when millions of people found themselves unexpectedly housebound, sourdough baking underwent a global renaissance. People who had never baked anything in their lives found themselves feeding starters, watching dough rise on their kitchen counters, and producing loaves of bread with a flavor and texture they had never experienced from a shop. Something ancient was being rediscovered. There is a reason bread has been the symbolic food of so many cultures. It is simple. It is fundamental. It takes time and attention and care. You cannot rush it. The yeast does not respond to impatience. In a world that increasingly demands everything instantly, sourdough requires the opposite: slow fermentation, patience, and trust in a living process older than recorded history. The jar on your shelf, or the one in your imagination, contains something extraordinary. A community of organisms that have been fed by human hands for thousands of years. That have survived empires and plagues and industrial revolutions. That carry, in their microbial DNA, the oldest collaboration between human beings and the living world. Every time you bake, you are part of that story. And every time you eat a piece of truly good bread, still warm, with a crust that shatters and a crumb that yields, you are tasting something that connects you, across 5,000 years, to every human being who ever pulled a loaf from a clay oven and thought, this is enough. This is good. This is home.